Hello and welcome to News Intervention. There's a famous adage that every country has an army, but the Pakistan Army has a country. And Pakistan Army ensures that it does something to prove this adage right. Just a few days ago, Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, he called a meeting of all the parliamentarians of Pakistan. This meeting was also addressed by ISI Chief Faiz Hameed. And all the parliamentarians, including the opposition members, the members of the treasury benches, members from the Pakistan government, everyone was present, except for Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. Yes, Imran Khan was absent from this very important meeting, which was supposedly on national security issues, and Pakistan Army Chief wanted to take all the parliamentarians on board. This is the state of affairs in Pakistan. The stated objective of this meeting was that General Bajwa wanted to discuss on national security issues and issues arising in Afghanistan, the issues of Pashtuns, Kashmir, Balochistan and Sindh. But the real objective was that General Bajwa wants to win over all the parliamentarians and make them a party to all the ridiculous foreign policy and economic decisions that the Pakistan Army Chief has taken on behalf of Pakistan as a country over the last few years. So right from the beginning, Faiz Hameed and General Bajwa tried to reason out in front of the parliamentarians that Pakistan is being singled out by a large section of international community and they are being victimized despite their best efforts. So Faiz Hameed during his monologue mentioned that Pakistan has implemented 26 of the 27 points mentioned by the FATF. And despite this, Pakistan continues to be on the grey list. And apart from this, the Asia Pacific group has given another 6 points to be implemented by the Pakistan. So this was a kind of a victimhood card which was being played by both General Bajwa and the ISI chief in front of the parliamentarians. They wanted to win over them. They wanted to make them a party to all the decisions which they are taking. And when General Bajwa came in to speak, he talked about how external forces have created proxies within Pakistan. And he talked about terrorism in Balochistan. General Bajwa categorically refused to accept that there was a freedom struggle that's going on within Balochistan. Bajwa tried to explain that IMF's pressure on CPEC projects could scare away the foreign investors. And if that happened, Pakistan's economy could get into further trouble. Bajwa also talked about situation in Afghanistan, Kashmir, Balochistan, Pashtunistan and Sindh and mentioned, rather lectured the elected Pakistani parliamentarians that their politics should be confined to governance issues and they should take national security into account before indulging into any kind of politics. But this was ironic. Pakistan Army Chief was himself forgetting the role of a professional army. Pakistan Army is indulging into all kinds of activities except for what a professional army should do. They were nowhere to be found on the borders. Rather, they were involved into day-to-day affairs of managing Pakistan. Pakistan's selected Prime Minister Imran Khan is the biggest example of how General Bajwa is indulging into the domestic politics of Pakistan. It was the plan of Rawalpindi to have a selected Prime Minister in Islamabad while the generals continue to take decisions on economic issues and foreign policy matters. All this has backfired now. Pakistan's economy is in real bad shape. Unemployment and inflation are at historic highs. And Pakistan is facing international isolation. It has become a vassal state of China and US is pressurizing them. Even the people of Pakistan has now realized that Pakistan Army indulges in rigging of the elections and installs proxies in the seats of the government. During this entire meeting, the Pakistani parliamentarians were angry and bitter towards the military leadership. And I'll give you specific examples about this. The ISI chief, Faiz Hameed, in his address tried to explain the situation of Afghanistan. He said that Pakistanis helped Taliban gain ground in Afghanistan, and now that the Taliban is moving ahead, it's gaining ground, they're not listening to us. He also asked if the Taliban gains control of Kabul at gunpoint, so should the Pakistani government recognize a Taliban-led Afghanistan government? Two parliamentarians stood up, Bilawal Bhutto and Shahbaz Sharif. They said categorically that the Pakistani government should not recognize a Taliban-led government in Afghanistan. And this is how they opposed what the ISI chief was saying in this meeting. The matter did not end over here. Faiz Hameed said that Pakistan needs to decide between the US or the China, to which again the parliamentarian said that Pakistan must remain neutral. It should not take sides with either the US or China. Now again, ISI chief being the ISI chief, he was trying to drill through his point in front of the elected representatives of Pakistan. He said that Pakistan will have to take sides. I mean, he was just trying to unnecessarily impose his views on the parliamentarians and trying to take a sanction from them and make them a party to what they were trying to implement and impose upon the people of Pakistan. Another parliamentarian who stood up to General Bajwa was Mohsin Dawar. Mohsin Dawar stood up and said categorically that there are certain areas within Pakistan that harbor Afghan Taliban. And these Afghan Taliban are armed and equipped by the Rawalpindi and the ISI. So these Afghan Taliban, armed by the ISI and Pakistan Army, they go and attack Afghanistan. So how can the Pakistani government expect cooperation from the Afghan government when they themselves harbor Afghan Taliban, arm them and equip them and ask them to go and attack and then come back and stay within Pakistan? So this was Mohsin Dawar's pointed question to which General Bajwa had no answer. Another issue that Mohsin Dawar raised during this meeting was about the ethnicity of PTM members or the Pashtuns. ISI chief had raised the question of PTM members calling themselves as Afghans. Mohsin Dawar said that their ethnicity was Afghan and they were proud about it. Mohsin Dawar asked the National Assembly Speaker Asad Kaisar about his ethnicity. Asad Kaisar replied he was an Afghan. Mohsin Dawar then asked MPs Ali Muhammad Khan and Mushtaq Ghani about their ethnicity. Both of them replied that they were Afghans. Mohsin Dawar then went on to categorically say, he explained it very beautifully, that Pashtuns may be living in different areas in that Pashtunistan belt, but they were proud to be called as Afghans because their values, religions, traditions, everything was similar. And they were very proud about their ethnicity and called themselves proudly as Afghans. Another Pakistani parliamentarian and former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shahid Abbas Khakam, he told General Bajwa and Faiz Hameed that they must listen to what Mohsin Dawar was saying. Because if Pakistan were to leverage its position in Afghanistan, then it should be the Pashtun brothers who are living across the Durand Line, rather than the Afghan Taliban. Most of the Pashtun leaders present in the meeting questioned the rationale of not having any other friend in Afghanistan except the Afghan Taliban. They also questioned the rationale of harboring Afghan Taliban within Pakistan, arming and equipping them to carry out attacks on the Afghan government and Afghan forces. They said that Pashtun leaders must not be accused by the army of harboring these Afghan Taliban or the terrorists within Pakistan. But howsoever strongly the Pashtun leaders made their point, General Bajwa was adamant to his point of view. He said that he needed political support from the Pashtuns to expel Afghan Taliban from Pakistan. General Bajwa also alleged that Pashtuns were funded from foreign sources. This was not received well. In fact, Mohsin Dawar stood up and very strongly contested this point of view. And he said that if General Bajwa can prove in any court of law that the Pashtuns were receiving foreign funds, then they are free to hang the Pashtun leaders. And General Bajwa had absolutely no answers. Mohsin Dawar went a step ahead and said that despite systematic rigging by the Pakistan army men, he still won the elections due to massive support of the Pashtuns from his constituency. He gave an example of a polling station which was housed within the Frontier Corps camp and where bogus votes were being polled. And despite that, he won the elections. due to massive support of the Pashtuns from his constituency. Another Pashtun leader stood up and asked General Bajwa that he must release popular Pashtun leader Ali Wazir. To which General Bajwa said that Ali Wazir must first apologize and only then can he think of releasing him. Well, there's a video of Ali Wazir where he categorically said that he will never ever apologize to General Bajwa.
ډیر ظلمونه کړی دي ډیر قتلونه یې کړی دي وطنونه یې برباد کړی دي دا اوس هم چې څه روان دي دا د دوی د لاسه دي په کار دا ده چې دوی د وطن د ولس د قانونونه د خاورې نه معافي وغواړي چې د دې په دې خاوره باندې کوم ظلمونه کړي دي موږ دا وایو چې مزید د دا جنگ دا کومه چې اوس توره تیاره د ظلمونو روانه ده په دا پسې د دې شاته لاس دی موږ دا وایو چې مزید د دې شي نه لاس راونیسي دلته د قومي خانه جنګي ته دوام نه ورکوي مننه.
And this shows the anger and frustration of Pashtuns with this military leadership. All these examples prove the frustration of the elected representatives of Pakistan with the military leadership and how they were voicing their concerns, putting forth their point of view in front of General Bajwa and Faiz Hameed. Ironically, the treasury benches, the people from the government, from the Pakistan government, were cheering up when General Bajwa and Faiz Hameed were speaking. It was like somebody who is in charge of the government is being cheered by the subordinates. And Imran Khan, the selected Prime Minister, was nowhere to be seen. Because even the elected representatives of the government, they know who is in charge. The Pakistan Prime Minister is just a dummy. The real people who run Pakistan are General Bajwa and his subordinate, Lieutenant General Faiz Hameed, the chief of ISI. This secret meeting on national security affairs was actually meant to involve Pakistan's political leadership into General Bajwa's diplomatic and security decisions. But General Bajwa was utterly disappointed to hear the views of elected representatives of Pakistan. Unlike the selected Prime Minister, Imran Khan, who always toes whatever is told by the Rawalpindi generals, these elected representatives were not willing to toe the line of Faiz Hameed and General Bajwa. Few courageous parliamentarians stood up and said categorically that Pakistan Army must stay away from politics. Despite best efforts by Faiz Hameed, the ISI chief, and Pakistan Army chief General Bajwa, they could not get the Pakistanis elected parliamentarians to come and endorse their kiddish foreign policy decisions. We'll have to wait and see whether General Bajwa calls another such meeting to discuss issues about Kashmir, like he did this time about Afghanistan and security scenario within Pakistan. Isn't this strange that Pakistan's Prime Minister was absent from such a crucial meeting where national security and foreign policy was being discussed? Everywhere, all across the world, elected heads of state always are present in such crucial meetings. But this is Pakistan. Here, Prime Minister is selected rather than elected. And who selects a Prime Minister? Well, these are the ISI chief and the Pakistan Army chief. So General Bajwa and Faiz Hameed, who hold actual power, were already there in this meeting. And they were being cheered by the government members, for they knew that these are the men who run this country called Pakistan. And as I said in the beginning, every country has an army, but the Pakistan Army has a country. This country is run by a jihadi narrative. And that is why people in Afghanistan, Kashmir, Balochistan, Pashtunistan, and Sindh are suffering. In fact, the entire region, entire South Asian region and the world is suffering due to these policies of few uniformed men who are sitting pretty in Rawalpindi. It's time that the world takes note of these issues and do something about it.